one of the phrases I use, and I have this in the book, is that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. So it's like the same way that compound interest, accrues through finance, the effects of your habits multiply over time. And so often these choices that you make, they're these little 1% improvements for you or against you each day, and they're very easy to overlook on a daily basis, right? Like, what really is the difference between eating a burger and fries or a salad and chicken for lunch? You don't really see a whole lot.
Better.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It tastes amazing in the moment.
That's actually a crucial point. Habits that are immediately satisfying are more likely to be repeated. And so pretty much any behavior produces multiple outcomes across time, right? Like if you eat a donut right now, it's tasty and sugary.
So good.
But in the long run, you gain weight. And so the immediate outcome is favorable, the long-term outcome is unfavorable. With good habits, it's often the reverse, right? Like you go to the gym right now, and it takes effort, you sweat, you have to work hard.
You have to sacrifice your time for Netflix and chill to go train.
The immediate outcome is unfavorable, but the ultimate outcome, you're in shape and a year or a month or whatever, is favorable. And so the challenge for building good habits and breaking bad ones is often finding a way to pull the long-term consequences of your bad habits into the immediate moment. So you feel a little bit of pain right now and want to avoid it. And the long-term rewards of your good habits into the immediate moment, so you have a reason to repeat it again in the future.
So is it kind of like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and eat donuts at the gym, so I feel good, but also realize this is going to help me long term?
So in the book, I talk about this concept I call identity-based habits, and essentially the ultimate form of immediate gratification is the reinforcement of your desired identity. So you go to the gym and you're reinforcing the identity of I'm the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. Or you show up to write and you're reinforcing the identity of I'm someone who writes every day. And so you get a little bit of immediate satisfaction from being that person and being aligned with your identity, your values, your principles. But you also get the long-term rewards from showing up every day. And so what you don't want is some kind of immediate reinforcement, like eating a donut at the gym, where you're casting votes for two different identities, right? It's like, I showed up at the gym, I'm casting a vote for being the type of person who doesn't miss workouts, the type of person who's healthy, but then I eat a donut, so now I'm casting a vote for being an unhealthy person. So it kind of like washes out, right? So you want reinforcements that align with your principles and values.
So you essentially have to form your identity first. Is that what I'm hearing?
So
who you want to be.
I think that your habits are the way that you embody an identity, right? So like each time you make your bed, you embody the identity of someone who's clean and organized. Each time you go to the gym, you embody the identity of someone who's fit. Each time you sit down to write, you embody the identity of a writer. So you can sort of think of it as like each behavior casts a vote for the type of person that you want to become. And if you cast enough votes for that type of identity, you start to believe that about yourself, right? Like if you go to church for 20 years, you believe that you're religious. You study Spanish every Tuesday for 30 minutes, you believe that you are studious. So in that way, your habits provide evidence of your desired identity. And I think that is probably the ultimate reason that habits are so important. It's true, like habits can help you earn more money or be more productive or lose weight. And all that stuff is great. But in addition to the external results that habits provide, they also shape your sense of self. They are the engine or the avenue through which you learn to believe things about yourself. Like sometimes people will say stuff like, fake it till you make it. But fake it till you make it is asking yourself to believe something without evidence for it. And you can do that for a little while, you can do it for a day or a week, but eventually, I mean, there's a word for beliefs that don't have evidence behind them, delusion, right? And if you're deluding yourself, then eventually you give up on that. But the power of doing a better habit each day or casting a little vote for that type of person is that now you have evidence to root your belief in.
Yeah, and so now I've done it for 6 months,
Right? Like, I mean, now you have a lot of evidence that you're a podcaster or a good interviewer. You know, like you do this over and over again. Each time you cast a vote for believing that about yourself. And you aren't delusionally believing that you're a good interviewer. It's because you've shown up and done it hundreds of times.
Right.
And so I think that that's true for any habit, large or small, that they provide evidence of the desired identity or the type of person that you are.
What are the 5 non-negotiable habits for you on a daily basis?
Oh, that's a good question. So obviously this is going to depend on your goals. For me specifically, I think there are a few core habits that are going to serve everybody and certainly serve me well. So exercise is a huge one. I don't do it daily, but I train 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I didn't exercise, I don't know that I would be an entrepreneur. Like, I don't know if I could handle the psychological roller coaster without the physical outlet.
Yeah, the release,
You probably feel that as
Yeah.
like an athlete too. You know, like
Gotcha.
for being an athlete for so many years, I feel like I need to push myself physically in addition to mentally.
Absolutely.
If it's just mental, it doesn't do it for me. I
No.
need to have a physical outlet.
So exercise.
Exercise is one. The ultimate meta habit is reading. Because if you build a habit of reading, you can solve pretty much any other problem. You know, you want to learn how to be a better podcaster, you can read about that. You want to learn
Right.
how to meditate, you can read about that. You want to learn how to make more money, you can read about that. And so what you need is to develop a habit of reading, and then whatever problem you're facing at the time, you have a method for solving it.
Okay.
Writing for me is huge. I don't actually know what I think about something until I write about it.
Huh.
I find that if
Get your ideas, you get it out.
If you ask me something right now that I haven't written about before, what is really happening is I'm just talking my emotions. So what I mean is that you'll ask me something and I'll get an implicit feeling about what that topic is. I'll have some intuition, a gut feeling about it, and I'll say whatever that feeling is driving me to say. But I don't actually know if that's what I really think, what I deeply think, until I have the time to sit down, write it out,
and the information.
logically go through it. Because a lot of the time, you know, if you would ask me the same question next week, I might have a different feeling at that time. So I'm talking different emotions. So I think I actually need to have time to sit with it a little bit and write it through. To get what it actually
Okay.
does.
Writing's third.
Exercise, reading, writing. I don't know. I would say that those are probably my main three.
Yeah.
If I was going to pick 5 and the other 2 that I would add, going for a daily walk would be a huge one. That's one that like I kind of aspire to because I don't do that every day. But anytime I do, it really benefits me. The second thing, and this is where I'm spitballing, I don't know if this is actually true, but I wonder about your non-conscious mind being like a bottleneck sometimes. And so if you're moving, if you're walking, it gives your non-conscious mind something to do. So you're like, it gets out of the way. And now you can actually like have this stuff arise or think in a different way than if you're sitting. So I don't know. I think that those are 2
Yeah,
benefits.
that's cool. Okay, so that'd be the fourth thing.
Sleep is the 5th one. And this is one that I actually am pretty good about. So my cardinal rule is that I don't cheat myself on sleep. So if I stay up late and work till midnight, I'm gonna sleep till 8 or 9.
Sleeping in.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna get up early because then I'm gonna cheat myself on that. But yeah, I think that those are kind of the core things. It's funny, sometimes people ask like, oh, how can I double my productivity or something like that? And you'll see articles like that all the time, like follow this 1 5-minute trick to double your productivity. But the real answer to most of that stuff is like get 8 hours of sleep a night, exercise, don't eat like crap, and then instantly you have this boost of productivity and motivation.
Exactly.
I mean,
You have
that's-
energy.
The fundamentals are covered 90% of it.
Yeah, exactly. You said this, you said you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. What are the systems you created to be successful beyond those kind of core habits right there?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. I think first I just want to talk a little bit about that point that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. What do I mean by that? So often when we set about to change something or to achieve something, the first step is almost always setting a goal. And this is coming from someone like I was very goal oriented for a long time, right? Like
You're an
I would
athlete.
I would set goals for the things I wanted to do in sports, the goals for the grades I wanted in class, the goals for how much money I wanted to make in my business. And sometimes I would achieve those, but then sometimes I wouldn't. And so I had this question like, well, clearly I'm setting goals for both, so like that can't be the thing that determines it. And you see this a lot, that the winners and losers in a particular domain often have the same goals. Like every Olympian wants to win a gold medal.
Sure.
Every job candidate wants to get the job. So if the winners and the losers have the same goal, then the goal cannot be the thing that distinguishes the two. And the thing that distinguishes them is the process, the system behind the goal. And this is also important because achieving a goal often only changes your life for the moment. It's like, you know, say you're, just take like a simple example. Say you have a messy room, you know, and you get motivated and you set the goal to clean your room. Well, you can do that in an hour and then you have a clean room. But if you don't change the sloppy habits that led to a messy room in the first place, then you just end up with a dirty room again.
Yeah.
So it's like treating a symptom without treating the cause. And habits are a better solution in that case, because if you fix the inputs, the outputs fix themselves automatically, right? You don't have to fight to have a clean room if you have clean habits. And I think that that's true in a larger sense as well, right?
Yeah.
People want outcomes. They want to earn more money or lose weight or be more productive or reduce stress. But the outcome is not the thing that needs to change. It's the system that precedes it.
So give me the let's bust the myth of how many days it takes to set a habit, because there's 14 days, 28 days, 60 days, a year.
Right.
If you do something every single day, and maybe it changes for each person, but what's the science or the statistics say about how long it takes to form a positive or negative habit, I guess?
So 21 days is the thing you hear all the time, 30 days, 100 days, whatever. Right now, 66 days is making the rounds, is the latest
I saw
time.
that in another book. What was that book?
Well, there was one study done that found that 66 days was the average for how long it takes. And as a rule of thumb, I don't think it's terrible. Like, you should remind yourself, yeah, this is going to be months of work. It's not just going to be something quick. But even within that study, the range was quite wide. So if you did something simple, like drink a glass of water at lunch each day, it would take like 3 weeks. If you did something more difficult, like go for a run after work every day, that would be like 7 or 8 months. But I think actually that question to begin with is sort of there's like a broken mentality behind it.
The wrong question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Because if you ask that question, the implicit assumption is, when do I have to stop working? When is this done?
And is it automatic after a certain period of time?
Well, the honest answer to how long it takes to build a new habit is forever, because if you stop, then it's no longer a habit.
It's a constant choice and a decision, right?
I think people often look at habits as like a finish line to be crossed, but it's actually a lifestyle to be lived. And if you look at it as a lifestyle change, then you're saying, you know, okay, what's something small and sustainable I can stick to, right? What's something that can actually last over time? So it is true that, and you can actually map this through research, that a habit will become more automatic with practice. But this reveals another important point, which is that there's nothing about the amount of time elapsed that leads to habits being built. You could practice something once in 30 days, or you could practice it 1,000 times. What actually leads to a habit becoming automatic and becoming learned and ingrained is repetition. So the phrase that I like to use is not 21 days or 30 days, but put in your reps. I mean, that's the real thing, is you need to practice. And if you put in your reps, then your brain starts to automate how that process works.
Yeah. What makes you an expert on habits?
Oh man.
Based on lots of other people that are talking about habits. Why are you talking about it differently, and what have you discovered that's different than everyone else?
Okay, so 2 questions there. So the first one is expertise. And I think that, and I've said this many times before, I'm just going through this with everybody else. I consider my readers my peers, in the sense that we're all just trying things out. The only difference is I write about what I learn and share it each week, but we're all just learning along the way. Early on, I had a feeling like that. I was like, who am I to, I'm just a guy. Who am I to write about this? And I had a friend tell me the way you develop expertise is by writing about it every week. So I wrote a new article about habits every Monday and Thursday for 3 years. And that was how I developed the expertise on the topic, was by writing about it.
You did research,
right.
And you said, here's what I found, here's what I tried, here's what worked, what didn't work.
It's a combination of me reading the scientific literature and reading the research, and then trying to distill the practical insights from that, and testing things out in my own life as a weightlifter, a travel photographer, a writer, an entrepreneur, and seeing what that looks like, and then the two together. And I think you need both. Like, I don't want to be some new age version of an academic who's in an ivory tower just like theorizing about ideas. It's different what it looks like to put ideas into practice, right? Like, imagine you're a peak performance coach and you show up to coach like an NBA team. These guys are like, dude, you need to step on the court if you know what, right, to see what it's actually like. So you need to have both to have a firm understanding of that.
So you were researching and you were applying it into your life. And what was the second part?
The second question, which I think is probably the more interesting one, which is what makes my angle different, or what makes this different
than every other book out there about habits.
So you can broadly put books about habits into 2 categories. The first book, the first category is what I'll call motivation models. So motivation models are about what sparks a behavior. How do you get started? How do you get motivated? The second category is what I'll call reinforcement models. So how does a habit stick? How does it last? Why do certain behaviors get reinforced? And sometimes books will touch on one, but focus primarily on the other. A lot of the time, they'll just kind of live in separate worlds. That's what I would say is happening in like the self-improvement space. Then you have the academic space, so psychology or neuroscience or whatever. And a lot of those books are focused on the why, but not the how. They'll tell you why something happens, why a particular neuron fires, why a particular biological process works the way it does, but they don't tell you how to implement it in your daily life. And so what I wanted to do was try to combine the two.
Why and how.
Yes, a book that is both why and how. why do habits form the way they do? Why are they important? And then how do they actually work? And my hope is that Atomic Habits was able to do that largely because of the framework that I put together. So in the book, I lay out these 4 stages that all habits go through. And I felt like we needed a new model because most of the models right now are either a motivation model or a reinforcement model, but not both.
Okay.
And you need to understand what both sparks a habit and what makes a habit stick.
Maintains it, yeah.
Yes, if you want to be able to understand how they work and how to make them last.
And what are those 4 frameworks?
So the first stage of every habit is a cue. The second stage is a craving or some kind of prediction that your brain makes. I'll give you an example of these in a second. The third stage is the response, and then the fourth stage is the reward. So you walk into the question I had that no model I could find could solve in any good way or explain in any good way was, why can the same person respond to the same cue in a different way? So let's say you get into the habit of going to the gym at 5 o'clock every day, but then sometimes work gets busy and you don't go to the gym at 5 o'clock. Current models don't explain that very well because it's like, well, the cue is 5, you should be going to the gym right now. It says the routine follows automatically after the cue. Or why does someone walk into the kitchen and see a plate of cookies and then they automatically want to eat it? But you could just as easily imagine that you just got done eating dinner in the other room and you're stuffed and you're full and you walk in and you see a plate of cookies and you're like, I'm stuffed, I don't want to eat anything. So what's going on there? And I think these 4 stages explain it, which is you see the cue or you experience a cue, and then your craving or your prediction differs based on your current state. So the way that you interpret the cues in your life is contingent upon the current state that you're in.
The way you're feeling.
Right. And also other things like your beliefs or your identity, the social group that you're part of, right? So like if you're in a different group, then maybe you interpret things in a different way. You could imagine one group, they practice a particular religion, they walk into a butcher shop and see pork and they're like, oh, we can't eat that.
Right.
Another person walks in and they're like, oh yeah, I'll have a pork sandwich because it's obvious and easy and right there. So what you choose is contingent upon how you interpret the cues in your life.
So how do we change what we interpret?
Yes, good question. All right, so this is a key point in the book, which is that social norms, society leans heavily on us all. So there are just broad examples of this.
Family pressure, religious pressure, media pressure,
all kinds of stuff.
Peer pressure, everything.
Yes. Let's say, so just some broad examples. You walk into an elevator and you turn around to face the front. You have a job interview and you wear a suit and tie or a dress or something nice. There's no reason it has to be that way, right? Like you could face the back of the elevator, you could wear a swimsuit to a job interview, but you don't do that because it violates the shared norms of the group, right? It violates the shared expectations of what that society has. But that's true not only in a broad sense that we're part of these tribes, like big tribes, what it means to be a Christian or to be American or to be Australian or whatever. But it's also true in the small tribes that we belong to, what it means to be a neighbor on this street or a member of your local CrossFit gym or to volunteer for a local organization. All of those tribes, all of those groups that you belong to have a set of shared expectations, a set of shared norms. And the key, if you want to build habits that last, if you want to change the way that you interpret cues, is to join a group where the desired behavior is the normal behavior, right? Like there are plenty of people who they want to work out, but going to the gym feels like a lot to them. It feels hard, feels like a sacrifice. But there are also people who go to the gym every week and it's just normal. It doesn't feel like an obligation. That's the desired behavior is the normal behavior.
It's their lifestyle.
Right. Same thing for musicians, like if you want to learn an instrument, hang out with people who play all the time. Like if you hang out with a bunch of musicians, it's like, well, yeah,
that's what we do all day.
We play 4 days a week. We play 7 days a week because it just happens. That's what the tribe does. The caveat to this, and the thing that I don't see people mention a lot, is that the reason social norms influence our behavior so much is because we want to belong to the tribe. We want to be friends with those people. And so we don't want to lose the friendship or lose belonging over violating the norms.
Yeah, you're not going to hang out with a bunch of vegans and have pork.
Right.
And just like be the only one eating that.
You won't hang out with them for very long because you're not going to be friends with them anymore.
Exactly.
Right? They'll kick you out.
So you want to rise to the standard of that group, of that community.
So the key, I think, is to join a group where your desired behavior is a normal behavior and you already have something else in common with that group. So Steve Cameron is a good example of this. So like Steve runs Nerd Fitness, right? And all these people want to get in shape who are coming into his community, but they also love Star Wars or Batman or Spider-Man or all these other things that nerds are into. And if you show up, it can be intimidating to want to get in shape or work out the first time. But if you can connect with the group over your mutual love of Star Wars, then you're like, oh, well, I'm friends with these people, and now I also want to pick up those other habits with them because I want to belong with the group because we're already friends. And so I think you can apply that methodology to most new tribes that you join. Don't just join a new tribe because they have the desired behavior. Also try to find a way that you can overlap with them. Find some shared context.
Some other stuff too, yeah.
That you can bond over, and then it's easier to adopt the habits.
Musicians that like to be healthy.
Yeah, right.
If you want to do both, right? It's like finding that even subgroup.
It's like, hey, we love playing music, and then also you're going to start eating better because we all want to eat healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so that's the second part, the cue, and then the desired habits, right? The craving.
Cue, craving, response, reward.
Okay, and what's the response?
So this is mostly about making it easy. So this is the habit itself, and the easier a habit is, the less friction there's associated with the habit, the more likely you're going to be to do it. So the way that I like to describe this, imagine you have like a hose, right? And there's a bend in the middle. There's a little bit of water trickling out. If you want to increase the amount of water going through the hose, you have two options. You could either crank up the valve and force more water through, or you could just remove the bend and let it flow through naturally. And a lot of the time, advice is centered on cranking up the valve. It's like you need to try harder, you need grit, you need perseverance, you need motivation, you need to overcome the obstacles in your life. And all those things are fine, but I think they're all short-term solutions. You might be able to do that for a day or a week, but I've never consistently seen someone stick to positive habits in a negative environment. It's really hard to fight that day in and day out. So the solution, I think, is to reduce friction. And there are a ton of ways you can do this. One way is just to scale the habit down, make it as easy as possible. So people have heard things like this before, start small, small steps, whatever. But even when you know you should start small, it's still really easy to start too big. So, say you want to get in shape and you're like, all right, I want to run a couple days a week, but I know I should start small, so I'll only run for 15 minutes. But even that is like way bigger than what I'm talking about. I mean, it should be so small that in the book I call it the 2-minute rule, but you should downscale any habit to fit within 2 minutes. So it's like, all right, I want to go for a run 3 days a week. My habit is I put on my running shoes and I step out the door. Anything else that happens after that is just bonus.
Is a success.
Now, sometimes people resist that because they're like, well, this sounds kind of like a mental trick, right? Like I know the real goal isn't just to put my shoes on. I know the real goal is to go for a run. So if you feel that way, my suggestion would be only do the first 2 minutes for the first few weeks. Because what you need to do is master the art of showing up. Like I had a reader who ended up losing over 100 pounds. And one of the things that he did was he went to the gym, but he wasn't allowed to stay for longer than 5 minutes. So he would show up, be there, do like half an exercise, 5 minutes would go, he'd leave. He did this for like 6 weeks.
Wow.
Now, it sounds ridiculous. It souned silly because it's the opposite.
Just work out for a half hour.
Yeah. But what he was doing was mastering the art of showing up. And a habit must be established before it can be improved, right? If you don't establish the habit, there's nothing to optimize. If you're not showing up at the gym every day, who cares about what workout you're doing? You're not even there.
Don't start running an hour a day if you've never run in a long time.
Be the person who shows up and puts their running shoes on every day before you worry about how far you're running and what kind of workout you're doing and all that type of stuff.
A lot of times, establish the art of showing up first before going all in on the desired goal you want.
I think that's right. I mean, you can find examples of people who flip a switch and transform their lives or have an epiphany and do it overnight, but I think that it's rare. I think that the more sustainable strategy, the more reliable strategy is to scale it down to the first 2 minutes, focus on that, establish it, master the art of showing up, and then go from there. So really you should usually when people think about building better habits, they optimize for the finish line, right? It's like, how much weight do I need to lose? How much money do I need to make? When can I finish this book? It's all focused on the result. But I think instead, if you optimize for the starting line, make it as easy as possible to start, scale it down, organize your environment so that all that stuff is set up. This is another strategy for making it easy, which is that you can prime your environment to make the future action easier, right? Like if you chop up a bunch of vegetables and fruit on Sunday, it's now easier to have a healthy snack during the week. If you set your workout clothes out the night before, it's now easier to get into the workout the next day. But doing all that stuff to make it easy to show up, that is probably the more important piece early on. There's also like all these There are all these logistical details for building a habit that nobody thinks about in the beginning.
Like what?
Well, like, take the example of my reader who went to the gym. It's like, okay, what gym are you going to go to? How are you going to get there? Are you going by yourself or are you going to go with a friend? Do you need to...
What time are you going to go?
Yeah, what time are you going to have your own water bottle or is there a water fountain at the gym? And that stuff sounds like silly and small, but when someone's starting...
Space, right? Yeah.
The fact that like, oh, the gym doesn't have a water fountain and I always forget to bring my own, that's enough friction for someone to quit. So by focusing on just the first 2 minutes, you figure all that stuff out. And then once you've got that piece mastered, now you can worry about how long the workout is and what program to do and all that stuff.
So figuring out the logistics first is an important step.
I think that's something that just comes naturally with scaling a habit down.
Yeah.
You figure out what's required to show up because you're not worried about the result or the outcome or how long you worked out or judging yourself for, for running 30 minutes when you should have run 45 or whatever.
Got it. Okay. So this is the response still?
Right.
Okay. And what's the fourth?
The fourth one, and this is crucial for getting a habit to stick, is the reward or the outcome. So every behavior is followed by some kind of outcome. This is just basic cause and effect. And if the immediate outcome is favorable, is enjoyable, you have a reason to repeat it in the future. It's kind of like
donuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep
right.
repeating.
It's like that example. If you feel good, if you feel satisfied right after you do something, then it's like this positive emotional signal, and it's like, yeah, I should do this again.
Yeah.
So you can see this actually, business is a really interesting example with this. There are a lot of products, and some of the most successful products have some type of immediate satisfaction that is layered into them. So toothpaste is a very common example. There's no reason that toothpaste needs to taste like mint, but it does because the minty flavor and the refreshingness of it, it gives your mouth this clean feel. It's more satisfying, so you have a reason to do it again in the future. I heard an interesting one recently about car manufacturers, that some of them are adding a fake guttural roar to the car or the truck when you press the accelerator, because it just adds to the actual natural sound of the engine, so it makes it more satisfying to step on the gas and to drive the car. So there are a variety of examples like this, but if you can add, the key is it needs to be immediate, right? So like this is, in the book I refer to this as the cardinal rule of behavior change, which is behaviors that are immediately rewarded get repeated, behaviors that are immediately punished get avoided. And it's really about the speed of how quickly you feel successful. If it feels good, you have a reason to do it again.
Is that why video games do so well?
Video games are masters at this. They're masters at it. So they're masters actually at a variety of aspects related to habit formation. So one is they're really good at this immediate satisfaction. There are all kinds of things. You're actually constantly getting feedback in a video game. Even if you're just running, you hear the pitter patter of the steps. That's
gratifying.
The jingles of like picking up another power up or seeing a kill or something like that. Whatever the game is, you're always getting constant feedback. Sound, things that are on screen, they're really good at dripping out. Watching the score increase in the top corner, that is immediate feedback. So they have all these different ways of making you feel satisfied, and when you see that progress, you have a reason to continue in the future. This is one of the most effective forms of immediate satisfaction. Is progress. As soon as you feel progress, you have a reason to continue. It feels really good to see that you're making headway.